As you reach the reality of cost, you have to make some tough decisions in the script, and you have to rewrite and rewrite almost to your budget, to what you can afford to do within the days that you have. So I had to do quite a substantial rewrite and cut about 15 pages out of the script a couple of months before we shot. That kind of freaked me out. But at the time, I was reading the brilliant Making of Star Wars book, and it was very comforting to be reading his production process as I was going through it myself, obviously not comparable in any other way but the bare bones. But he had to do that on Star Wars. He had a whole planet for the villains, and very close to shooting, he transferred all the action onto the Death Star. So I thought, well, if George Lucas can make these massive changes to what is now seen as this, like, you know, sort of set in stone masterpiece, if actually massive script changes were being made in that film at the 11th hour, then God knows I can cut 10 pages and do radical things to my silly little low-budget film. So I had this big sequence towards the end of the film where the smoky corridor is now, where they journey down this smoky corridor, instead of going right up to hi-hats, to Ron's, they ended up in Moses' flat at that point. And all that stuff where Sam sees the truth of how Moses lives was earlier in the script. And they were trapped in Moses' flat, and the only way out was to go outside onto the balconies and climb up. At that stage, Moses' flat was much lower in the block. And they had to climb up about 5 stories up the balconies. And I had this fantastic, very elaborate fight sequence where Moses was, you know, pulling Sam up the side of the block, and creatures were climbing up the balconies. You know, you get a sense of what it would be from the 1 or 2 bits of it we retain. But quite, you know, like a month, 2 months before we shot, Naira Park, the producer, said to me, you know, Joe, we can't afford that. That'll be another 2 weeks shooting. And it would have been hugely elaborate. But we did scout it, you know, we scouted a totally different tower block. And we figured out all the angles, and, you know, we would have had to have the creature performers on wires and the camera on wires. It would have been hugely elaborate. Would have been really cool. But anyway, we couldn't afford to do that. It had to come out. And I had to figure out a way to keep the dramatic bits that were important to the script whilst losing the fighty stuff. So that was quite tough. But in the end, I think it probably made it a bit better to move Sam's little journey inside Moses' flat to right to the end of the film. But yeah, that's a bit that had to go. It was very elaborately storyboarded. Maybe we'll put the storyboards on the DVD so you can see what might have been. But yeah, lots of tough choices like that to make at the 11th hour.
There was one scene that I wish they hadn't cut out. It's just after the scene where we're walking with an alien on our way to Ron's. I'm on the phone and Ron tells me to bring some Rizla because we're probably going to go and smoke some weed. And I go to this little kiosk, like this little kiosky shop thing. And there's this Indian guy in there behind this iron grate. And I ask him for the Rizla and he says, well, give me the money. And I'm just like, just pass the Rizla, I'll give you the money. And then there's this big old argument, and I start fly kicking the fence and all kind of crap, and then I'll just stand there and smile and throw the money at him and say, keep the change, and walk off. I really like that scene, because it went back to it later, just before I get bitten, and I go back there and like grab some sweets from under the desk because he isn't there, and there's an alien in there.